Welcome to the Succeed Against the Odds podcast. My name is Francesca Anastasi, also known as Sabea. I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I'm your host and mentor. And each week we bring you an inspiring person, an expert, or message, and some behind the scenes to help you ignite and unleash your potential. Thanks so much for listening. Welcome back to another episode of the Succeed Against the Odds show. Today, as my guest, I have a very special friend, Monika Becker. So happy to have you here. Welcome, Monika.
Thanks, Francesca. Thanks so much for having me.
I am thrilled to have you. I've been wanting to ask you to be on my show for a long time. I managed to ask you and you accepted, so very thankful for that. I met you a few years ago at a networking event, and I know you're a coach. For the sake of our audience who may not know who you are, would you like to share a little bit about what you do with your coaching, what type of coach you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So my company is called Clear Directions Coaching, and that might give you already an indication of what my coaching is all about. So I focus on helping people find their clear direction that is rooted in their values and guided by their purpose and the vision that they have for their life. And in case people don't have that kind of a clarity about their purpose and values, that's what we actually work on so that they become clear on what really matters in their life, what are their guiding principles, and what do they want it to be about. And one important factor of that coaching too is the aspect of selfishness. And I refer to it as good selfishness, which is to be actually focused on one's own well-being, but not at the expense of other people, rather being respectful of other people and their perspectives. So it's basically making one's own well-being and contribution to the world the highest priority while respecting other people and their perspectives as well. Because I find that too many people nowadays, they are actually putting themselves back, second or last even, and they don't really know how to speak up and how to live based in their own values and what matters to them, which is, I find, everybody's good right to actually do that and to live out what it is that matters to them and to develop or create a life that's meaningful and joyful to them. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
You were my guest as a speaker at the first Magnificent You Women's Conference.
Yes.
And you did speak about this, which was totally fascinating topic. And I totally agree with you. I do believe that too many people put themselves last, and you really can't do anything from an empty cup, as they say. This is your expertise. This is your field. And this whole area of the good selfishness. What do you tell somebody to draw where is that fine line where taking care of yourself becomes so much of a priority that you forget about others? Like, how do you balance that? What do you tell your clients to make sure that they balance that out and don't go the opposite? The reason I ask you this is because I've actually I've heard, I have a specific person in mind, which I'm not going to say who it is, but I've heard this person say, I've always given so much to everybody else. I've always put myself last, and now it's my turn and I don't care about anybody else. I'm only going to take care of me, which to me is the complete opposite, which is not healthy either. So how do you guide someone who's been on that path of just giving, and now they want to flip completely opposite where it's totally imbalanced?
You know what? First of all, we need to look at their unique situation because it all happens in a particular context of their life. So there is no black and white recipe. So basically, I would first take a look at their situation. And for them to work with me, there needs to be obviously a pain or something, a pain point that they even want to make a change. So depending on what that is, if they actually feel like they are being too selfish or they are having difficulties in their relationships, which might stem from their being overly self-focused, then we would probably investigate and see in which areas they might actually overdo it in regards to their self-focus and neglect other people's perspectives or what they have, how they play a role in their lives, right? So it definitely depends on the context. And another aspect to look at is, like, if you imagine their life being a pendulum, and before they came to me, let's imagine they have been just giving, and the pendulum was definitely totally on one side of the realm. And now they learn to actually take better care of themselves. And maybe the pendulum naturally needs to go a little bit more to the extreme of the other side before it then can come more to a more stable or a less excessive up and down in regards to self-care and neglecting self-care. So I think that that's another aspect. There is some, like, a natural flow of people when they overdo it in one side, that they might also overdo it on the other side for a little bit before they actually find their natural balance. And I'd like to say one last thing, which actually may be a little bit contradictory. However, I'm going to say it anyway, because ideally that's what we would all learn to do, is actually to put ourselves first almost all of the time, in a respectful way. It doesn't mean that we are mean to other people, that we take advantage of them, or that we don't care about other people. However, in the end, I find that us living our lives in a way that is a joyful and authentic expression of who we are, which includes making sure that whatever it is that we do is somehow in alignment with who we are, I find that is actually the best way of living our life, right? And the amount of how much we actually acknowledge other people or let their perspectives and needs infiltrate into our lives, that may vary from one person to another, depending on who we are and what we care about. But essentially, I don't think there's anything wrong about a person actually, for anything in their life, to consider if it really matches their values and if it is in alignment with who they are or who they want to become.
Monika, what led you to talk about this? Like, why selfishness? What led you to address this specific issue?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And as you can probably imagine, there's a story attached to that, which it is probably with many people when they choose their topic. It generally comes from a personal experience. And what I've observed for myself throughout my life is that I have oftentimes done things just to please other people and to accommodate what I thought were their expectations of me, and in order to not disappoint them and kind of to fit in, which I didn't realize at the time, but it hurt me over time, and the hurt was piling up. So much so that at some point I became physically ill, or psychosomatically ill, not to a huge degree, but still it became obvious that there was something that I needed to address. And what I needed to address was actually to value myself and to develop a healthy sense of self-interest and self-focus. And because looking back, I oftentimes suffered in those situations once that I became more aware of what was going on, and I felt there was definitely some pain when I was saying yes, although I wanted to say no. So that's why it's dear to my heart to help other people as well to free themselves from those perceived obligations or expectations that other people might put upon us, or that we just put upon ourselves because we think that's what is expected of us, which we may never actually challenge and find out whether that's true or not. But that's basically where it stems from. Once that I discovered how freeing and joyful life can be when I actually am honest with myself and I come from a place where I honor my own needs, life is so much easier and more fun and more peaceful. And that kind of ease and peace and opportunity and expansion, I want that for many more people, for anybody who is ready to actually address it for themselves.
What would you say that this comes from, the giving, the wanting to give, and basically to the point of burnout. Do you think it's something that we grow up with from some cultures? As I know you're from Germany, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Right, and I'm from Italy, and I'm just wondering if some of these, I don't know if we can call them attitudes or tendencies to always be giving, if it is partly cultural or if it is from our own family, or is it something that we're born with by nature that we want to do that? What's your experience with that? What would you say is...
Like from my own experience, I think it's actually a mixture of culture and family, whereas family is part of the culture too. But I think in Germany, there seems to be the tendency that people put a lot of value on work and achievements, so that basically you kind of need to work first before you can relax and enjoy yourself, right? So there's definitely a lot of pressure that I put on myself to always need to achieve and work, rather than also enjoy just to sit down and be still after a work day, right? So there was definitely an inherent pressure that I put on myself, which I felt as something probably societal. And then as it happened to be my mom, she was definitely a very, very loving and giving person, to the degree that she was really giving in a way that it sometimes hurt her. And I could observe that too. But her being my mom and I being very close to her, guess what I did? Like, she was my model and I tried to be like her, right? So when you put those two things together, it's no surprise, right, that I've become a person that tries to please others and fit in and outwork everybody else. Right? So I'm not surprised at that. And to just add one more comment, and I believe that even if I had grown up in Germany and I had have different parents and different attitudes modeled to me by them, I think I could have developed a totally different attitude towards myself, right? So I think, yes, it is cultural and probably modeled by our families, but I can't say that every German is like me, of course not, right? So I think it also strongly depends on the influence of our parents and the ones that we are closest to as we grow up.
Our environment, basically.
Totally.
Now, you mentioned your mom. You said nothing about your dad, which was actually where I was going to go. The next question I was going to ask you, with your observation, since this is your field, this is what you focus on, would you say that women tend to be more giving than men when it comes to taking care of themselves? Like, do you see a difference there at all? Or is it just, are we imagining that women are more the selfless?
That's a really good question. And I think there may be a little bit of a tendency that women are more kind of conditioned to be the givers. However, I believe that the pressures on men are just of a different nature. I think they are more giving in regards to feeling that pressure to need to provide for the family and to maybe always have it together, right? So I think there's a different form of giving or pain that men are exposed to in comparison to women. And they do give in other ways, right? So I don't necessarily think that there is a lot of difference, although from my own experience and observations, it oftentimes seems as though women are more of the givers and the caregivers. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. I mean, I think that by nature, most women are more nurturing, like you said. And it's true. We forget that men tend to have that pressure of being the providers, which is, it's a big pressure to have.
Yes, totally.
And do you see any difference between, you and I are of the same generation. Do you see any differences between our generation and the millennials and the newer generation? Or do you see that this is across the board?
That's a good question too. You know what? I don't hang out a lot with millennials, but my understanding is, for example, that they seem to have an understanding of themselves that is more rooted in some sort of entitlement. At least that's the word that I've heard in connection to millennials. Excuse me, everybody out there, if I'm getting that wrong, especially millennials. So I think there is definitely a change that comes with the evolution of our society over time, for sure. But I'm not really a person that can legitimately speak to that because I don't really have that experience myself.
Well, I can say I am around millennials, and my personal experience is that they're not entitled.
Okay.
I think they're getting someone put that out there, and it's kind of stuck. And I think it's very unfair towards millennials. They have other issues that we did not have. I mean, they're growing up in a completely different type of environment with all the electronic devices like our phones and our computers that we didn't have growing up. At least I didn't. There were no computers until I was well an adult. I remember someone told me that, about email, which I'd never heard of before, and they thought that was the coolest thing. I already had a kid at that time,
Right.
So I was like, what? Why would you need email for?
Well, thanks for offering the different perspective. So that's right? Good to hear.
Yeah. I think they're very misunderstood, but you got me thinking now, because I'm going to start looking and asking the ones that I know. I'm going to start observing to see how they take care of themselves. I think they do take care of themselves a little bit more, but I wouldn't say that they're entitled as a full generation. I think the ones that are entitled, that might be. I'm not saying that they're, there are people in our generation that feel entitled. As far as I'm concerned, I've seen that in my experience. I think it's just the way they were brought up. So it kind of falls back on the parents.
Well, you know what? Like, I'll be curious myself if I'm around some and actually ask them a few questions.
So give me and our audience just one or two very easy tips, something that anyone can do for self-care, a selfish self-care tip.
Good. So here is one which sounds fairly easy, and for some of you it may be easy, for others may be more challenging, is if you are a person that easily says yes or no and you regret it afterwards. Here's something that I've practiced myself is, in a situation like that, you generally feel it, right? Whether it feels okay to say yes or no, or whether it's this kind of awkwardness and you want to say the other thing, but you actually say the opposite because it's kind of expected, or that's what how they know you. How about saying something like, well, let me think about this. Can I get back to you tomorrow? So basically buy yourself some time before you give the final response so that you can then maybe go back home and check in with yourself and be honest. What is it that you really want to say or do? Is it the yes that you normally say, or would you rather say no, right? And then communicate whatever feels real and authentic and good to you. So that would be one thing that has helped me personally make some better decisions that just felt better, even if it was then a little challenging to actually communicate that. But in the end, it strengthened me to practice that and to build that muscle. And the second tip I could give you is, especially for those people that are constantly in demand, whether it be personally, through family and or professionally, to make sure that you have one thing every day that is solely for you, whether it's 10 minutes reading or playing a computer game or a phone game before you go to bed, or whether it's just going for a quick walk around the block by yourself because you don't want to have to talk anymore, whatever it may be, but have one little point every day where you're actually making sure that it is something that you are just doing for you, regardless of anybody else.
Those are great tips, because you know what? I used to be one of those yes ma'am, yes sir people where I said yes to everything because I felt if I said no, I felt like I was letting people down. And I took it upon myself. I got to a point where it was overwhelming. I couldn't keep up, like a total burnout just because I said yes to everything. And take that pause. That is such a great tip, to just not give the answer right away, to give the brain time to settle.
And you know what? There are very respectful and empowered ways of then communicating your decision, right? Where you actually can say what it is that you need or that you want in a way that comes across as truthful and respectful to the other person as well.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
And even the second tip, that taking, if you're surrounded by, I had my family here for 50 days. They literally left yesterday.
Wow.
And of course, when they don't see you for so long, they want your attention 24/7 pretty much. And it was challenging at times because I have work to do. I have things to do. I did have a lot of time scheduled with them, but even when I was working, they still wanted my attention. So I really had to force myself, like you're saying, to find time each day for it to be me time.
And extract yourself, right?
Exactly. So very challenging at times, right? Because you don't want to be mean, but you just go, I have something to do. I'll be back.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? In those situations, a small little lie is totally fine. Fantastic.
So, Monika, you speak. You do. I do know you speak. People ask you to speak at their locations, at their events. So, if people want to reach you and want to have you as a speaker, as a guest for coaching, where can people reach you?
Yeah, so I do have a website which is called cleardirections.ca. So that's Clear Directions, the plural, with an S at the end. And depending on what it is that you're interested in, if you're interested in coaching, you can click on the coaching tab. If you're interested in good selfishness, there's a particular tab for that. And there's also one for speaking. If somebody was interested in engaging me or in offering me a speaking gig, that would be, there's some more information on that page.
Beautiful. Now, let's talk about clear directions. Can you give an example of a client that comes to you that needs direction? I know personally, I've seen it with my own clients when they come for business and they've been lost, they've been pulled in every direction, they've taken a million programs, nothing really fits what they really need, and they feel completely lost and overwhelmed with all that is out there. But that's on the side of business because there's so much that is bombarded to the person. When it comes to life coaching and what you do, what kind of problems or direction do the clients that come to you, what are they looking for?
Yeah, they're oftentimes looking for life direction and or professional direction. And you know what? Like the professional direction is actually more frequent. So a good example would be a client that came to me after she was laid off. And she was kind of still surprised by that and maybe a little shocked and really did not know what her next best step would be in regards to her profession. So she had no idea where she would fit, what she wanted to do, and needed some guidance or just somebody who listened and helped her figure out what it is that would be a suitable next step for her. Right? So I find that quite a bit, that people are in a transition, in a time of change, where they're either confronted with a brutal change, like being laid off, or it's self-selected, but then still doesn't necessarily mean that they already know what it is that they want when they step away from something that they know they do not want. Right? So I find myself helping a lot in that area.
Yeah, you're so right. I see that too, that it seems to be happening a lot more around people that are, I would say, over 30. What age?
Absolutely.
Would you say over 40? Would you say over 40?
Between 40 and 60, actually, in that time frame.
Yeah, it seems like, okay, what do I do now? We've done this for whatever reason, like you said, whether they've been brutally laid off or whatever the situation. But there is that, is this all there is? I want to do something that has, do you find that most people they want direction with something that gives them purpose in life?
Oh yeah, totally. And just as you were saying that, another person popped into my mind who was in a corporate environment. She had been there for 2 or 3 decades, and she just felt like this can't be it forever, right? So she was really done with it, but she had no idea what it was that would bring her more satisfaction and joy. Maybe a little bit of a flavor, but nothing really graspable for her, that it would have been clear enough for her to take some clear steps towards, right? So, and those are actually challenges that I love to face with my clients, because they're just so open and willing to work, because they do want to find what that next best thing is for them. So they're actually, wonderful. I really enjoy working with them.
Well, I hope that our audience listening, if they're finding themselves in that exact spot where they're needing direction, they're not sure what to do, that they do get in touch with you, because I know that you have a very good process, as I've gone through it with you once before, a few years
Thank
ago.
you.
So I do encourage you guys to get in touch with Monika for sure, because she will guide you. And that is probably the most exciting time in life, I have to say. If finding yourself in that spot where you really don't know what direction to go, to get someone to help you clear and shed light, that is the direction that is going to really bring you to the path of accomplishing what you want to accomplish without knowing what it is at this point. But it's so exciting. It's so exciting. So I encourage you to contact Monika.
Thank you. And it could be as easy as picking up the phone and call me. There's no obligation to ever work with me, but I do offer a complimentary session so that I get you flavor of my process and me as a person. And we can see if we're fit for each other.
Wonderful. So it's totally risk-free.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because in the end, you know what, like I don't want to work with people that don't want to work with me. So there's no use in me twisting anybody's arm or so, right? I'm here to be of service, and people that do want to work with me and that I feel good about, we generally accomplish a lot.
Fantastic. One question that is not a business question.
Sure.
Has nothing to do with what you do today. And the question is, when you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I think I wanted to be like my older siblings. They were all teachers. So I think I wanted to be a teacher too.
It's funny you say that, because in a way you're doing that. The other day I was trying to find the translation for a life coach into Italian, because
oh my God, yeah.
coaching is not that popular in Italy yet. It hasn't really picked up. And I was trying to explain it to my parents what life coaching was. And I couldn't think of a name. Like, how do you translate life coach? So I looked it up. And interestingly enough, the translation is teacher of life.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So
you want to say it in Italian.
Maestra di vita.
Maestra di vita. Okay. Okay, yes. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, oh, that is so cool.
That is very cool.
And you know what? Every coach I've talked to, when I've asked them what they wanted to do when they grew up, they've all said teacher. So I find that fascinating.
I took some detours, but I'm finally getting there. Yeah.
It's all good.
Yes, it is. It is, for sure.
So Monika, this has been a complete pleasure. I'm so happy we were able to connect and do this interview. Is there anything that you want to say to our audience before we go? Any last words?
Maybe picking up on the theme of good selfishness is to actually an encouragement to take yourself serious, because you deserve it. There's actually no better way for you to be in the world and to share your gifts with the world other than you being you and doing that as authentically and as fully as you can. And trust me when I say that you deserve that kind of a life that is joyful, that is meaningful to you, and that makes you feel good from the inside out. You all deserve that. And whether you work with me or anybody else, but get yourself the help if you need it in order to achieve that. Because that will make our world a much better place when people are finally living more from that place. So that's my encouragement and my desire or my request of you.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, and I will catch up with you soon.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. That was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please pass it on, and it would mean so much to me if you would leave an honest review on iTunes. I'd really appreciate it. Till next time, embrace your magnificence.